When we visited Vigan, the quaint historical colonial town in Ilocos Sur, on the northwest coast of the Philippines, we were checking out some of the different historical hotels there, and they are very nice indeed. In the lobby of Hotel Felicidad, we stumbled onto this map from 1775. It was the Ilocos area drawn by a French cartographer, not Spanish. And plain as day, something really struck us. Why is there a river, an island, and an area on this map labeled as Sinai? Just like the Bible spelling, in fact. No, not Mount Sinai. We didn't say that, nor does our cover image, but Sinai, a Bible word of great significance. Now, how does that Bible word come into use in the Philippines, recorded in history? Amazingly, it still survives, and we will explore the legend of etymology, don't worry, that is being taught today. By the way, if you haven't been to Vigan, it is a worthwhile adventure. Take the trip, and you can go see the map for yourself. We were able to acquire a high-resolution publishing of it, so it will be clear in this video. Again, Mount Sinai of the Bible didn't move, and we ain't saying so. We ain't moving it. That is not the purpose of this video. It remains in Saudi Arabia. No, not Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, by the way, named by Constantine's mom, who hardly knew her right hand from her left, whether alone biblical geography, of which she was no expert in the slightest. How any scholar could take her guesses and treat them as fact somehow because it was written years ago, well, even history needs to be checked because some history is false. But it eludes us, yet go look at the maps in your Bible and likely they placate that ignorance. In fact, test it for yourself. As Israel lived in the fertile crescent of Goshen, there was no water for them to cross on the Egyptian side into the Sinai Peninsula, the west leg of the Red Sea. So it doesn't work. You can draw them wandering in circles for as long as you wish over there, although there is a timeline, but you are still in Egypt. And the passage says they exited Egypt immediately and were pinned on the eastern leg of the Red Sea, crossing into Saudi Arabia. Though we disagree with everything else he posited, Ron Wyatt was right about Mount Sinai, at least in the area, and very well he may have found the mountain, we just can't really confirm it. But that's not the Philippines, and we do not say so. So how did the name Sinai, though, get placed on a 1775 map, not just once, but 3 times, and why? This is what we would call an extra to our Solomon's Gold series and 100 Clues, the Philippines is Ophir. We will prove as far as we can in this video, but this isn't our case. But yet more facts on top of so many others. And those aren't coincidences. It's time to explore this. Put on your hat and let's hit the trail to Sinai. In our release of our new paperback, The Search for King Solomon's Treasure, we laid down a very well-proven case demonstrating the Philippines as the ancient land of gold, supported by a 300-page sourcebook, in fact. So we give you all of our sources. They're right there. You go check them for yourself. Free access to that for anyone who orders the books. Now, so Philippines is the ancient land of Ophir, Sheba, and Tarshish. In fact, this map is in color that we're about to show you in Ophir, Philippines coffee table book, and black and white in the paperback. We touch on the mindset of Columbus, who believed that in the Isles of Southeast Asia, just above the equator, one would find Ophir, Tarshish, and the Garden of Eden. That's what he wrote in his journals and notes. Magellan also noted in his copy of his brother-in-law Duarte Barbosa's journal, his copy, that therefore it's not falsified. You're making notes in your own copy. Everybody does that. If you don't, well, okay, fine. But I know I do, and everybody in our group does. So, anyway, in Barbosa's journal, it says the Lokoi, or Ilocos of Ilocos, and he scratched that out, and he wrote in Ophir and Tarshish. Now, this was the group that were more eminent and wealthier than the Chinese. That is significant. The 1492 First Globe of the World commissioned by Portuguese government officials with the latest exploration data of that same age, even specifically mapped Ophir as Luzon Island, Philippines, and Mindanao as Tarshish. We cover all of that in great detail. We're not going to recover it, but I'm just going to do a quick recap here. That's what it shows, and right where Columbus and Magellan had identified, basically as Ophir and Tarshish. Magellan definitely is that. Now, he doesn't go into the lost tribes, but Columbus does. See, Columbus also believed, and all the sources are in our book and source book, check them out for yourself, that these same isles were the location of Arsareth. Now, that's a land where the lost tribes of the northern kingdom migrated according to the book of 2nd Esdras. So, the northern kingdom of Israel were freed from Assyria, modern Kurdistan. Some stayed there, according to 2nd Esdras, and the rest migrated on a 1.5 year journey. Where did they go? Well, again, we covered this in great detail in our Lost Tribes series. We even touch on it in our book, though very lightly. We don't get into the topic and we don't unfold research. Not on that topic. So, there was an Italian Jewish scholar named Parasol at the same time as Columbus and the Portuguese globe, first globe of the world. And he wrote that these lost tribes of Israel migrated to what we call today the Philippines, specifically into a region that was a desert. Now he writes, matching what 2nd Esdras calls a land in which no man had dwelt. Well, why had no man dwelt there? Because it was the desert, the wilderness. And we've had a lot of comments about that, and that is what that means. Now, Ezra was not saying we have to discount every continent on Earth, because that would be the logic, because they were all inhabited, except for maybe Antarctica, because people lived on the continent. So, that means people lived everywhere. Yet, you would be surprised how many have such assumptions in our comments in the Lost Tribes series. So where did he get this then? Well, it was passed down, but the mindset is clear. In the 1400s, the late 1400s, and the early 1500s, the explorers were narrowing in on East Asia, Southeast Asia, where they would find this land. And then we find this. Again, watch our Lost Tribes series for abundant detail on this. We're not covering all of this here. We can't break down 25 videos in one shorter one. I'm just setting the stage here because I'm going to start by answering the question, why? Why would these lost tribes name an area in which they migrated in the second Exodus? See, the first Exodus, they went to where? Well, they were headed to Israel, but they ended up in Mount Sinai, where they renewed covenant. See, in the second Exodus, they were doing the same thing. Not headed to Mount Sinai, but to an area that they then named Sinai and left the connotation behind for people to find as a clue. They don't name it Mount Sinai. Let's be clear. It's just Sinai. That's it. So let's look at this map. And by the way, we're going to cover the etymology too and the legends, so don't worry, we're going to get there in this video. And then we will make a further connection to the biblical land of Sinim. In fact, another reference to the place where the lost tribes migrated, according to Isaiah. The same place, in the end, we will find why Sinai is in the Philippines in name, named after the famous mountain in Saudi. But no, the mountain cannot be moved, and we're not saying that. They cross the Red Sea and then go to Mount Sinai. That's the way the account in Exodus is, where they renewed the covenant with Yahuwah on Mount Sinai, where his presence came down. Now, that's the first Exodus. This now has advanced. We're in the second Exodus from Assyria. And they do it again, not necessarily at a mountain. They name an area Sinai, again, not Mount Sinai, but because it was the landing site or near the landing, matching the first Exodus. Understand the only desert in the Philippines by scientific definition, which is where they landed, the land where no man had dwelt, the wilderness, the desert, and Pharisal says the desert specifically, is the Powai sand dunes that are actually not far north of this exact same area in a locus named Sinai on this map. Now that's no coincidence. We cover that in our Lost Tribes series. Again, don't attempt to debate that here. Let's look at our orientation first, just pulling up Google Maps. We're going to zoom in on this area in the red square, and to the right is Google Maps. It's an area still called Sinai. Wait, that's not Sinai, is it? Well, we'll cover the Spanish legend hijacking the name, and you decide. You can see Sinai is a region today, and to the north we see Baruch, with an island off its coast, also named for the region as Baruch Island. So let's zoom in here. You can clearly see the island here named Sinai, then the area south of that called Sinai, to the mountains, further toward the east inland, and the river, in 1775 also labeled the River Sinai. That's how it's spelled. That's what it says. This area is all about Sinai, but why? Well, remember, this is a French cartographer. Now, some would say, well, the French don't pronounce the T on the end of a word. Very good point. Words like parfait, which is AIT on the end, would be just like Sinai, right? Okay, now, they would pronounce, if they saw Sinai, in French, Sinai. There's no doubting that. That wouldn't be a surprise. But that's not what they heard from the natives, right? Because the name is Sinai. This is 1775, long after the legend we are about to cover, 200 years later almost. So, what gives here? Well, the French may not pronounce the T on the end of words like parfait, but they still put it there. So the T would still be there on the map. So even that rationale just doesn't hold water, doesn't work. So this area is all Sinai. That's what it is. Again, the desert of the Philippines where the lost tribes landed is just north of this. Did they settle in the desert? No, they landed there. And they would have immediately sought fertile lands inland and along the coast. Why is there no archaeology to prove this? Well, first, please tell us, who exactly is conducting archaeology in these areas? Because we're not aware of anyone. Not really. No one is even looking. And those that are, such as up in Cagayan province, north of this, they're looking in caves because they are looking for cavemen, and they're also taking the easy route. So you don't have to dig really deep in a cave typically, and at least not to start, to try to discover something. And here's the thing about a cave. You can literally date pretty much any date you want. Shh, Don't tell anybody that. But that's the fact. So if someone wanted to just say, oh, well, here's a rhino bone that's 700,000 years old, to try to justify billions of years, well, yeah, doesn't fly. Doesn't work. There's no possible way they can date to 700,000 years. We have no such technology. And we may never, for that matter. They especially ignore the flood. And anything that was enveloped by water for especially a year period, you can't effectively date that. That's according to science. Modern Sinai is the garlic capital of the north, and this is just a side note we'll mention while we're here. And the Mediterranean, from where the lost tribes originated, is well known for such, though that alone again doesn't prove anything, but a nice little side note. But here is how we can vet this further. And again, we cannot prove this out at this point, as far as we did, say, the full case of Ophir in the Philippines, which is firmly established and proven at this point. No one has been able to even touch the case in over 4 years. They try to ridicule and say, nah, but that is meaningless. They cannot disprove it. So why does this matter? Well, let's connect this even further, especially in the Bible. Now, this is significant because a lot of scholars take cracks at this, but they do not have a proper perspective of ancient geography. First of all, they don't have Jubilees, so they're missing ancient geography largely, and they do not know what the Bible says because they don't know how to interpret, and that's a problem. Isaiah 11, 10 through 12, we cover and map out in great detail. Actually, when you put it on a map, he's mapping out 3 regions where he even sets the boundaries of Kurdistan, for instance, as the migrations from which the lost tribes will return. It's 3 regions, only 3 on all of Earth. That's all he identifies. Now, neither are in the Russian steppes nor near it, really. So that don't hunt. The northern kingdom in Kurdistan and the Isles of the East, he also identifies with Tarshish, which is the Philippines. The southern kingdom later migrates into Africa, not north, as that would make no sense going deeper into the Roman Empire. No possible way they did that with hundreds of thousands or millions of people. That's ridiculous. The Romans wouldn't just turn their head and say, did somebody just pass by? Are you kidding? Have you seen what hundreds of thousands or millions of people generate in terms of noise? Wow. And not to mention their livestock and everything else. So it doesn't work. Nor did they migrate into Europe, according to the Bible. It's just not there. Again, we aren't reproving what took 20 plus videos to prove here, so watch our Lost Tribes series. Don't try to debate us on this video, or you'll be muted on those things. We're just not going to put up with that kind of thing anymore, and we'll set the rules since this is our channel. Now, watch our entire Lost Tribes series, and you'll see how we arrive at these things. But in Isaiah 49:12, the prophet defines, in another sense, which must match Isaiah 11, by the way. Don't forget that. Scripture defines Scripture. So, and Isaiah is not a hypocrite. So he didn't say one thing one time and something else another time. No, he's identifying the same thing. Now here he's writing of the return of the lost tribes again. But this time, it's not a reference to the southern kingdom, but only to the northern kingdom, which in chapter 11, he fully identifies, he maps as Kurdistan, modern Kurdistan, Assyria, and the Philippines. That's what he says, basically. So let's read. Behold, these shall come from far. He's talking about the lost tribes. And lo, these from the north. Now that's Kurdistan, which includes part of Syria, north of Israel, and Turkey, also north of Israel. And from the west, we're going to explain this, and these from the land of Sinim. Now again, this is the northern tribes, not the southern. And they went to two places we already know. Now many scholars pick up on this word Sinim, which is really plural for people of Sinai or people of sin, such as the wilderness of sin. We're not talking about sin being, an action of mankind breaking the law. No, that's not this sin. These are Exodus spots, right? I mean, that's where you see Sinai. That's where you see the word wilderness of sin. Okay, and indeed they are. And when the second Exodus, this time from Assyria, occurred, they named their migrations as well, still likely entrenched in this 1775 map, 3 times even. Now, you don't find it on Spanish maps. Why? Because they made up a legend to obscure this even. We'll cover that in the end here. We'll show you. But the French just recorded what was here. Just what they learned when they were in the area. And what did they learn? Well, they learned the area is called Sinai. Not Sinai-ite, Sinai. In 1775, 200 years after the Spanish legend. So we'll vet that. Now again, this word north in Hebrew is accurately interpreted as north, as pretty much always means north, and that is Kurdistan, and that's a fit to Isaiah 11 as well. Again, this word north, completely no problem. However, we believe there is a mistranslation here, as the northern tribes are not west, in earlier Isaiah even. So he has to agree with himself. And even the southern migrated south and west, but they are not being invoked here. This is the northern tribes, and we're talking about 2 areas. West makes no sense. However, this Hebrew word, yam, mostly means sea, most of the time, and not west. How does that get confused? How does that become a word for both sea and west? Because not all seas are west, right? No, the Dead Sea would be east, although that's not really even a sea, but it's called the sea. Well, the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the large sea, is west of Israel. Thus, sea and west became to be associated, but one must break down the context to understand which it may mean in this instance. This time, sea concurs with the rest of Isaiah, and west does not. It just doesn't fit, and it doesn't work. Thus, it's sea, not west. Now, interestingly, in the east, China, or ancient Sinai, or Thina in some references, or Thin in some references, noted in all different kinds of ways, very similarly to China, Sinai, Thina. It's well noted in history, well recorded. Offers a possible tie here, and it's very close in region, but it is not the region, because China is not being invoked here, nor is it ever invoked in the narrative of Ophir, except for in history it is a marker in which Ophir is to the south and the east of it. That's called the Philippines. However, we aren't looking for the mainland here. No, we're looking for land in the sea. We are looking for the land of Sinim in the sea. Islands, that's land in the sea. In what sea? In the Sea of Sinim. Now, what sea is that? It's the Sea of China, Sinai. In the South China Sea. What isles are in the South China Sea? The Philippines. This has never been a reference to South China, but to the South China Sea islands. The land of Sinim is in the South China Sea. We prove this out much further in our Lost Tribes series, but I'm going to mention it here, and we're just going to touch on this a little. Even in Ptolemy's ancient book of Geography, cartographers have mapped his directions, but he writes of an area that you see here, as Sinai Citus. Now, some try to use Ptolemy, by the way, to find Ophir, but see, here's the problem. Look at this map and any of them rendering Ptolemy. What do you see? You see a man who knew nothing of actual Southeast Asian geography whatsoever, nor the entire Pacific for that matter, as he's got the Indian Ocean enclosed. And the last land that you see here is not the Malay Peninsula. See, to propagate him as an expert on Southeast Asia requires profound ignorance. No scholar should ever do it, and any that do already show their hand that they're really just trying to commit propaganda. Notice this peninsula here, which is Ptolemy's famous Aurea Chersonesus, that we hear so much about. Books have been written about how that golden peninsula is the Malay Peninsula. That's nonsense, because it's not what's on this map, nor any. They say that it's likened to Ophir in Christ. First, it's not the Malay Peninsula. That's Burma. That's Burma. And the reason he identifies it is because he thinks that is the end of the earth there. No, he was wrong. He didn't know any better. He did a great job with the information that he had, but he was missing a whole lot. Tens of thousands of islands and an entire ocean, just the largest on earth. No big deal. He did not know about those. And it's fine that he did not. He also didn't know about the Malay Peninsula, as is common in the mindset of that era. But what they did know is Ophir was in that direction in the Far East. In the 1500s, Ophir was found by Magellan, and there's really no disputing that. Notice, though, something very fascinating about this particular rendering of Ptolemy's directions. Somewhere to the east of Burma, and again, he knew nothing of geography in that area beyond that point. He identifies Sinai, S-I-N-A-Y, is the actual Hebrew spelling of the word Sinai. The map shows Sinai Citus. Citus is Latin for proper or original position and location of what? Of Sinai. Of Mount Sinai? No, absolutely not. That's in Saudi Arabia, and we ain't moving it, so don't go there. But the Sinai of the Sinim, the people of the sea of Sinim, the land of Sinim, in the sea of Sinai. Sinim. It's all there. It all matches. And we call that area the Philippines, even though you can't make it out on Ptolemy's map. No surprise there. It's just noted in the sea here on this map, but is this a coincidence? We all know China does not go down that far, and the Indian Ocean is certainly not enclosed. We know that. So this map is not accurate to true geography, but what coincidence this is mentioning as Sinai in the area about where the Philippines would be, and we find this 1775 map of Sinai in the same area associated with the area we identified as the landing site for the lost tribes in the Philippines. Is all of that really a coincidence? We think not. No, let's deal with the legend of etymology. Couple more maps, and we'll get right to it, and let's just take it head on and see what the Spanish were saying and what they did. Does it even make sense? You'll see. First, another map indicating the Sinensis Oceanus. There it is right there on the map, or Sinai Ocean, China, or better termed, as we call it today, the South China Sea. What isles are there? Pretty sure it's only the Philippines, and that's it. Not China, and that's for sure. See, the same ocean later becomes known as Chinensis instead of Sinensis. Now, for the legend. All right, here we go. Here is the legend of the etymology of Sinai from the Spanish. From the 1500s, but it's not enough to say something is old, thus it's history. Well, yeah, sure, it's history. However, the question is it true? That's the question. See what you think? Let's read it right off of Wikipedia for simplicity's sake, and you can look it up for yourself. Sinai on Wikipedia. Before Magellan discovered the Philippines in 1521, the locality was only a small village of little over 100 natives who were called Tirongs. By nature, these primitive inhabitants were seafaring, warlike. All those barbarians, those Filipinos, like the ones who were illiterate. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, that's not what history actually says. The first Spanish who came said it was illiterate people, and in some areas, everyone was literate and reading and writing with their own language. The ones who wore, fine linens and $1.5 million in gold on their person in public, at least the upper class. Yeah, that doesn't quite tie here, does it? Not a surprise, because you see the Spanish head in this direction later in the 1500s, already starting. Fray Rada is a perfect example. He absolutely tells complete fabricated lies, and he's called out by Lavazeris and the other captains, the other leaders from Spain. They call him out, and they say, no, this is wrong. Filipinos, they are not like that. So this doesn't quite tie. But let's go further and see if it continues. Now, no doubt, there were tribes in the Philippines. I do want to mention that. But can we really believe in the entire Sinai area lived only one village, one tribe of 100 people? Well, maybe, but let's see where this story goes. Does it discredit itself? That's the big question, and you'd be surprised how often the Jesuit etymologies do exactly that. In their fast and picturesque sailboats, they traveled to adjoining and distant places, most particularly to settlements and villages along the Ilocos coast in Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, La Union, Pangasinan, and even Zambales. Now, funny, the Lokoy of Ilocos in this area, not necessarily the Tiroys, they may not be, that's okay if they're not, but they're there in this area of Ilocos. They're actually recorded as wealthier and more eminent than the Chinese, the Chins, according to Barbosa, and really Pinto says very similar things about them. They had junk ships, not just little sailboats that went fast. So there's a lot more to this narrative. Where are they in the Spanish latter histories? Well, you'll find they're gone. Even the maps. There's a 1734 map we publish in our book. And when you look at the illustrations on the sides, Filipinos from the Boxer Codex of 1590 to 1734 basically went from a very wealthy existence to an extremely poor one. Now, who did that? And how did that happen? We know. As if they never existed at all. And that's what they did. They tried to wipe them out of the record. However, they did not, because it's still in the initial records. And that's why they are the most valuable, because they're the most candid. They're not filled with as much propaganda. There's a little, but not as much. In those adventures, the Tirongs always challenged the people encountered to tribal wars. Those savages, right? Maybe, but likely, at least not all. Sure, there could be a tribe here or there as such, but this doesn't really jive with the full history, does it? And fought small battles against them. Those warring savages. Gotta wipe them and take their land, of course, and their stuff. We get to take everything because, well, we say they're savages. Really? That's called evil. Just so you know, that's called evil, no matter how one tries to justify it. Now, often, those sturdy and brave natives came out victorious. What are we reading here? I mean, really, is there a scoreboard for that? Yeah, it's sounding like a lot of fluff, really, already added. But let's keep going. Even in their daily chores, these people showed their ferocious characteristics. Oh, so let's see. Go and brand them as barbarians and savages, and well, then compliment them. Well, sorta. It's called patronizing, and again, that's evil, a normal tactic of the colonialists. When the renowned Iberians came, who wrote this trash? Oh, the renowned Iberians from Spain. Or in other words, the Jesuits who puff up themselves, and ultimately they are Jews in origin from Iberia. We cover that in the Lost Tribes series, which is the origin of Iberia is not Spain. It is in the Russian steppes in the Caucasus. And they migrated from there to that peninsula, renaming that peninsula in Spain after their people group. That's the fact. Salcedo was sent to explore and colonize the Ilocos territory during the early years of the Spanish regime. He found the Tirongs of Sinai in apogee of the social state, so far removed and isolated essentially, and perhaps they were. Small battles were daily occurrence. Really? And let's see, why? They seem to fail to say what that was even about, right? Does that even sound like the Filipino culture? Not to us. So again, it's suspect. We can't say either way, but it's suspect. So let's keep it in that category. So that in the year 1535, when the locality was organized and established as a pueblo, Salcedo named the new community as Sinai with two N's, a word in the local tongue. Okay, what's the local tongue? Local tongue would be the tongue of the Tirongs, right? Which means contest. Now, get this. The word Sinai with two N's is local to the Tirongs from their language. Got that? Let's remember that in context, because let's look at what he's about to say. As a pueblo, Sinai embraced and included in its territorial limit such as distant places as Ranchera de Par, now the municipality of Nueva Era, in Ilocos Norte, and southern barrios of Badoc of the same province. The vast territory, however, was reduced to present 78 square kilometers. So Sinai was a much larger territory even. Let's remember that. In the year 1575, the natives fully realized the hardships of pronouncing the term Sinai with two N's, that is, and to go away with the trouble. Salcedo, he fixed it all, declared that one of the letter N be dropped. Oh, that Savior Salcedo. Okay, so let me get this straight. The natives could no longer speak their own language? Is that what that's saying? They couldn't say the word that came from their own language? Yeah, that can't be the case, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Well, how about this? How about the Spanish? I mean, they don't have two N's in any of the words in the Spanish language. Really? Yeah, they do. So that doesn't work. It was too difficult for the Spanish to pronounce? Really? Now, anyone that knows even a little Spanish knows that just ain't true. It doesn't work. It doesn't fly. So what is this talking about? Who are these people that can't pronounce two N's? Well, it doesn't even really matter. It doesn't matter what language, because the point is, if you can pronounce one N, well, guess what? You can pronounce 2. This is absolutely illiterate trash. There is nothing logical whatsoever about this. It is not an etymology. It is not history. And it is not written by someone who knows anything about linguistics. This is a fairy tale. A sad, very poor legend with no basis in reality whatsoever. To think that anyone could pronounce one N but not the second N, is simply illiterate. Doesn't even matter what language. Now, since then, this municipality has been called Sinai. See, because they had to drop the other N because no one could say it. It's just so hard. I can't do it. How do I do it? How do I can't do it. Right? I mean, this is what they're saying. Nevertheless, it was only in 1913 when the same was deeded by the government upon the initiative of the late Don Calixto Kabakungan, so that the municipality council enacted a resolution to that effect that Sinai was adopted as the official name of the community, to which said resolution was duly approved by the provincial board of a local sur and by the defunct Philippine legislature. This is hogwash. Now, we have a far better one for you. The Spanish followed this fairy tale, but the true native continued to use their original name for this area. And it was not Sinai, it was Sinai. It was Salcedo that attempted to obscure the fact that Sinai as a word and area is found in use in the Philippines because he wanted to explain away the questions that would arise from such, because that is monumental. So, he made up a fairy tale which does not gel, has no logical basis, in order to hide the long-standing name. But see, the French had no such agenda. And that is what we're seeing here. This is a French map. A French cartographer fashioned this. And they just recorded history, and the name was Sinai in area. No T on the end. The river and the island off the coast as well. That makes far more sense in logic than Jesuit nonsense they call etymologies, yet they are completely incoherent, especially in this case. So there you go. The isles in the Sea of Sinim, right out of the Bible. The area called Sinai, named after the holy place Mount Sinai, still over in Saudi Arabia, not moving it, but this was the location, or close to it, of the second Exodus. The Spanish could not have the world knowing that not only did they conquer and steal from the original land of creation, from Solomon's land of gold, but they were enslaving the lost tribes of Israel in part. Not all Filipinos are, and we don't know whether the Tirongs represent Israel. We're not saying that. We don't know. And even native Ophirians, we don't know whether they fall in that category. Or were they migrants from Indonesia or other areas? We don't know. We haven't researched the Tirongs. But what we do know is it's complex, but we see a surviving reference to this second Exodus right there in the Philippines. Yet again, and we have found many things that tie. Scripture certainly leads in this area. That's as far as we can go for now. And may we prove all things for ourselves, all of us, and continue our research on this topic, and most of all, on those things that help us restore relationship with the creators. Thank you for watching another Solomon's Gold series in 100 Clues. Yah bless to all. It's here, the book so many have awaited. No longer just a case on YouTube, but now a 384-page paperback, The Search for King Solomon's Treasure, supported by a 300-page sourcebook of our sources. No one has, nor will they, disprove this case, because King Solomon's navy came to the Philippines, the ancient land of gold, known in Hebrew as Ophir, Sheba, and Tarshish, in Greek as Christ and Argyre, and even mapped as the Philippines, in Latin as Aria, the origin of the chemical symbol for gold, for obvious reason. And ignore the background photos of, the wealthiest people of all time in mass as a documented part of ironclad history, 1590 Boxer Codex. Wow. And even archaeology supports that, and even science, and even language. Now available in the Philippines on ophirinstitute.com and ready to ship. Even available on Shopee, and available internationally on Amazon. Also in the Philippines, not international yet, although we're working on some things for this, we have released this as a 10 by 12 oversized coffee table book, and it is tremendous. We could not be more pleased with the quality printing here in the Philippines, and you will not be disappointed with this masterpiece keepsake for a lifetime and beyond. It's a more briefcase with dynamic photography throughout, including larger full-color maps. Finally, we have published the Book of Jubilees, the Torah calendar. That's what they called it in Qumran. A 288-page curated version of the R.H. Charles translation of Jubilees, with over 100 pages of commentary and a map section including the first map of the world. Yes, Noah's division of the entire earth. Wow. Every believer and anyone interested in history should know this, as they will never understand prophecy without it, nor really even ancient geography. And even in modern times, a lot gets explained when you understand this. And it tracks the location of the Garden of Eden to the Philippines. Already available free in eBook, you can download or purchase internationally on Amazon or Shopee Philippines. Just go to bookofjubilees.org for links, and you will be amazed at this revelation. Or better yet, buy them all. We offer discount bundles in the Philippines. On our channel, we have over 250 teachings available free. They remain free and always will be, as we always have said. Buy your books today and preserve this beyond YouTube's censorship, in which you will notice now 98,000 subscribers, and yet few are notified by YouTube. Learn this material, and we will have more ways to learn coming soon that will help you teach others. Thank you, everyone who has watched our videos, purchased books, attended conferences, including Davao a year ago with over 5,000 in attendance, shared with others, also for your prayers and support in every way. We need it all. Make sure you are still subscribe to our channel, because YouTube sometimes, unsubscribes our viewers, as many have informed us. Must just be a glitch, I guess. And we'll leave it at that. Be sure to like us on Facebook at The God Culture _space original. And if you cannot, for some reason, as many have told us they cannot friend us or follow there. In fact, we had that happen in a conference where we said, everybody, take out your phones and go ahead, friend our Facebook page now. And most of the crowd said, we can't. Really, Facebook? Well, we'll be talking about that soon. Please let us know. And don't forget to subscribe if you don't to this channel. We are almost at 100,000. Help us get there soon. Yah bless to everyone.